Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sparing Partners. Today, we're talking about something somewhat different. Well, I guess that's true of most of the podcasts. They're all different. But today, we're talking about something kind of less focused on networks and more focused on what we do with the networks and our experience, our professional experience. And we're going to talk about LinkedIn and what happens on LinkedIn when your profile gets hacked, and what are the implications of something like that in terms of our digital identity, what we do online, who we are online and otherwise, and what are the implications not just for humans but also for IoT services. And I have the pleasure to have with me today Frazer McKimm, and he is the director at New Wave Networks in Ireland. And I've known him from when he was at the Dense Air Networks. So before we start, I would like to welcome Frazer and ask him who is he, what is he doing, and off we'll go. So Frazer, welcome to Sensophilia, and again, tell us what you do, who you are.
Thanks, Monica. I'm a big fan of the podcast, so it's great to be on the other side. So I work in networks. Obviously, New Wave Networks is a company I set up recently after I'd finished as the general manager of Dense Air Ireland, and we were a wholesale network provider. We had spectrum that we won in an auction in 2017, and we used to build predominantly private networks and also networks as a service as a wholesale provider to the MNOs. So that was a 7-year project which came to an end in December, and I decided to continue in the area of network building and acting as a consultant to advise companies on particularly in building smart networks and realizing smart networks for smart cities, smart farms, and smart buildings. So that's really where my background is. I come more from the hardware end of the business. I originally trained in industrial design engineering, so I came from more designing the products. But over the years, I've got more involved in the network side of it, which I find fascinating. Well, that's probably enough about my background.
Well, that's very interesting, but we're going to be talking about something else that happened to you recently, which is related to your, it's somewhat related it's related to your professional role, but not necessarily to what you're doing right now. So why don't you tell us what happened to you and what are the implications of that? But let's just go through the facts first.
Okay, so I was in the UK. I was actually visiting my aunt in London. And the following Saturday, 22nd of March, I was taking a train through Somerset, and I saw a message from LinkedIn saying that I had successfully changed my password on my account. And I went, no, I haven't. And so then I tried to get into my account, and I couldn't. And couldn't get into my account for the rest of the day. And every time I tried to change my password, I had numerous ways of getting into my account. I could get into my account through my Google, to Apple, or straight, and none of them worked. And then I tried to change the password. And normally what would happen is, because I have two-step identification on all my emails, I'd get an SMS message saying, yeah, here's the code, it's you. I couldn't get a code back through my regular email or my authorized email that I was using for the LinkedIn account. And so I was completely locked out. So obviously I had a kind of a minor meltdown. And when I arrived at my destination, I continued to try and find myself. And then one of my colleagues and friends who I was staying with said, hang on a second, you vanished from LinkedIn. What do you mean? He said, I can't find you anywhere. I've looked you up and you're not there. And then I had my second meltdown that suddenly, I use LinkedIn a lot because in our area, the ICT, LinkedIn is a very good professional platform. It's, it's consent based. So you only have people in there who agree to connect with you. So it's a very, very useful tool for professionals. And moreover, I joined LinkedIn February 2004, and I've just found out that Monica joined in January 2004, so she got in ahead of me.
I was
So
first.
22 odd, 23 years in there, and you were first, and nothing like this had ever happened to me. And I was a premium customer, and so I kind of immediately got on to notify them. So I then found myself trying to navigate the LinkedIn customer section for basically raising a ticket, like we do in the telecoms business. You raise a ticket, there's a fault, and that was really difficult to navigate and not very user friendly. And I just that kind of eventually I managed to register a complaint and said what happened. I said this is not me, because I notified that my username had changed to a very old email I hadn't used for years, and maybe it's because that was a previous email I used 10 years ago with LinkedIn. I don't know, but anyway, it wasn't me. So eventually I just got kind of more and more frustrated because I couldn't find out anything. And then I stopped firing off emails and desperately trying to get in contact with LinkedIn, which proved extraordinarily difficult. I got sort of eventually a message back. It looked like an automated message saying, we've registered your ticket and we get back to you. And this went on for Monday. And then on the Tuesday, I was still invisible. And I still basically couldn't find myself anywhere, nor could anybody else. And I went through friends who might know people in LinkedIn to help me try and get something. And then eventually somebody helped me get in, and they raised a ticket for me separately. And then I got a message through saying, for your own safety, we've shut the account down. So I said, right, well, there's an account in there somewhere to shut down at least. It hasn't actually completely vanished. And then around the following Tuesday, I got an email from a premium customer support lady who said, yes, we're very sorry about all of this. We're looking into it for you. And that went through Wednesday, and now we're getting into Thursday. And then I had to do another authentication process where I had to upload my identity card, or details, and eventually I was let back in. I got in on the Thursday the 27th, and lo and behold, when I got back into my account, I discovered I had changed sex. I was now Amber Maya Armstrong. I was completely a different person. I had gone under some form of network lobotomy, and I was now an energy analyst working for ConocoPhillips in the US. And I'd also studied in Heidelberg University, which was really interesting because I know it's famous for medicine, but not for petrol heads. So my entire identity had been scrubbed and substituted by this Maya Armstrong, which initially I thought was somebody was taking the piss because my aunt and godmother was an Armstrong, and I thought somebody in the family is just making a joke here, but it wasn't. It was a person. I looked up and I found an obituary to a Maya Armstrong, and then I realized, okay, nobody in ConocoPhillips was registered under Maya Armstrong. Bizarrely, my photograph was left in place. Everything else had been changed, and I could still access all my 1,600 contacts that I built up over many, many years. And then the penny began to drop, which was, okay, somebody was able to get access to all of some very confidential and C-level contacts built up in telcos and ICT over many, many years, assume my identity and get in under the cover. So when they'd see this Maya Armstrong, they said, well, I don't remember connecting with her, but she's in my contact list. And they were able to scrub all that data. In fact, they had 48 hours, they had plenty of time to download everything. They were able to access my messages, all my more recent messages. And so I kind of felt like I'd just been completely subsumed into this person's who I didn't exist, obviously, probably it's a bot or whatever, but identity. And I didn't get any feedback from LinkedIn except an apology. Recently, somebody more seniors reached out to me, but no explanation about what's happened. And the fact that people who I have a confidential relationship with under a mutually agreed connect protocol in LinkedIn suddenly were exposed, people who would never have normally connected, to somebody else with nefarious intentions. They probably wanted to sell the data, sell the information. I don't know. And since then, I've been
But hold
slowly.
on, you don't know what happened, so you don't have any like in my case, I didn't notice anything. So I was a contact of yours, but I didn't get anything weird. So is that have you heard anybody that got something weird after that? Although I guess that even if they did, it's not like they would associate it with you. I mean,
Yeah,
with
so
your account being hacked.
yeah, so LinkedIn said if you find any strange contacts in your thing, or you notice any odd, please let us know. So
Mhm.
the information with LinkedIn has been one way. That's part of the problem, is the whole communication has been really terrible in that respect. I don't know what they're thinking, but I can't send a mail shot out to all of my contacts through LinkedIn, because you can't do that. I had to contact people, the senior people, the people I really know, and say, listen, this happened. Let me know. And they all said nothing yet. But we let you know. So, but it was a manual process. It was really long and laborious, where I had to literally individually go and notify people and say, this happened. I'm really sorry. Obviously I got slagged off, and they said, oh, you've become Myra. That's much more interesting. It suits you. So there was a bit of joking around this, but actually the issue is extremely serious, because you essentially, people had access to these accounts who would not, an unidentified party had access to accounts that should absolutely not have had access to any of these accounts. So their own, confidentiality or information that they might have been discussing with me through our messaging system, through LinkedIn messaging, was basically exposed. So if anybody was doing
Yeah,
any industrial research that they wanted to sell off, they got access to good information. Let's put it like that.
yeah, yeah. And I guess that the worst part is that you don't even know what happened to it. So
No.
if somebody comes to my flat and they steal money, whatever, I mean, I don't know they stole that, whatever, a physical good, but here you just don't know, or in this case, you don't know what happened. And I guess, I mean, I had something completely different, but with Zoom, and I sort of had a similar experience in the sense that they said they might apologize, but there's no information coming in terms of this is what happened.
Yes, and that's the bit that
You
really
just
worries me, because I reckon they
yeah.
know. I think they know what happened. I mean, for instance, on the side, 51 very close contacts, but these are people I wouldn't be in contact with in on a normal basis, like
Mhm.
every week, maybe every 6 months, maybe every 4 months.
Yeah.
They had all been blocked from accessing my account. So when I got into my contacts thing, I noticed that there
Yeah.
was blocked contacts. So 51 people, like very old friends and some old colleagues and some recent
Mhm.
ones, had in a
Yeah.
bizarre had been blocked. Now I don't know whether that
Yeah.
had been done by LinkedIn when they shut the account down. They thought maybe in that area
Yeah.
51 the hack had come. Um, but again, no explanation, no information.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and I pay a premium service, which is 69.99, 70 euros a month, for my LinkedIn account. So I was kind of taken aback that it was so easy to do. Let's put it like that, and so
Yeah.
difficult to rectify for
Well,
my.
I guess even if you have a free account, I mean, you want to be, that's kind of like basic. And
I completely
as you
agree.
said, we all rely. I mean, everybody I know of, I cannot. Well, okay, there might be like five exceptions, but everybody I know uses LinkedIn extensively, both as a source of information and also to find out where people go to message them. I mean, so there's all sorts of things that we use LinkedIn, and it's very successful, so very important. And if you do have a problem, that's not just it is actually very consequential in terms of our identity. And I think that this is something that I've been interested for a while. I mean, how the concept of identity, of who we are, it's really shaped by things like LinkedIn. And so we have different parts of our identity, and so this is really important. So I mean, security clearly is an issue, but there's a lot of practical, practical implications to that, which is new. And the question is that what do we do about that?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, what's interesting, I kind of had a sort of an epiphany when I realized, your identity is taken over and then it can be repurposed. So when we're in the virtual environment, suddenly my contacts in LinkedIn couldn't find it and interact with me. So that had a direct professional impact for the period of time which I was out of it. And then but more interesting and more philosophically is that somebody had repurposed my identity for something I had no visibility on what they were doing with it and my information and my 1,600 contacts. I had no idea what was happening to me, my virtual me, by what Myra was up to. And she was obviously up to no good. But so I thought, I kind of said, well, in the context of, say, smart cities, in the context of going from the virtual to the physical world, where our identity is used to authorize us to do certain things in the physical world. I mean, your identity, whether it's two-step or whatever, your credit history, whatever it is, that your identity will increasingly enable you to access and do certain things online and offline, whether it comes to drone deliveries or access to autonomous electric vehicles in the cities for short-term rentals. You walk up to your e-car and it opens for you. So if somebody can actually steal that identity and all those various authorizations and then repurpose it for what they want to do, well, that has a real world consequence. And therefore, the issue of security becomes a really big issue as we step out from the bubble of, say, LinkedIn into the virtual physical bubble of interacting through other devices in a smart environment. And therefore, I kind of thought, hang on a second here. This was really easy for somebody to do. They just made up their mind and they came in and they just stole me, and suddenly me became Myra, and Myra went off and did with me whatever she wanted to do in those moments. Now, if I had a drone service for deliveries or whatever, she could have done all sorts of things with the drones that I was signed up to, and therefore you kind of have to say, wow, what are we doing about this? It's all, we're all rushing headlong into this, brave new future, which we all love in the techies. We love our technology, but there are some more fundamental problems that might arise that we need to be addressing, in my opinion.
No, absolutely. And with IoT, the problem could be even worse in many respects. But one of them is that you don't have the person there sitting on the train and say, "Oh, this is not what I did."
Yeah,
You change my, what I'm saying? Like, so the drone or the camera does not have any, agency, so to say. There's it's just going to be sending the same password and it's not working, and it's just not. So, well, okay, I guess there's somebody managing the whole thing, but you don't have the person actually looking over that. And with a drone you might create some real damage. So,
exactly.
like you're delivering some medicine, and they get control of it, and then they substitute the medicine with a poison. Well, that's a
Yeah,
real issue. If you
yeah,
don't
exactly.
know that if you are receiving it, that's what happened, and you wouldn't.
Exactly, and like, I mean, I laugh because I just thought of, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You wake up the following morning all scrappy with no memory of what happened the night
Yeah,
before,
yeah.
because Hyde was out. Myra Armstrong was out there doing her stuff during the night, and you got back in the
Just
morning and you're all roughed up knowing what the heck happened. And then, the bills start coming in,
yeah.
or the lawsuits start coming in. And the repurposing of drones, it was just, because I'm very much involved in that area now and looking into it very carefully from the infrastructural point of view. I'm kind of, the drone thing just hit me immediately, but there's any number of other consequential outcomes and it was so easy for these people to get in. And I have no knowledge of what happened because nobody's told me, despite my questions and my answers. It's still like, it's like a big dark lake out. the link, what's
Yeah.
happened. And
Yeah.
that's not acceptable in my view. We need to, maybe they don't want the risks to be exposed. Fine. I don't even know how many other people this happened to. If it wasn't for your good self saying, let's do a podcast about this, I would have to do one-to-one communications with all my 1,600 contacts
Yeah.
to let them know what actually happened, unless I read a book
Well,
so you're providing a very valuable
now,
service.
now we have a you have a way, and well, and that's why I'm happy to do this because we're not going to find a solution to the problem today, but I think we need to kind of start thinking more and more. So I've been looking like a little bit about fraud detection with APIs, for instance, where you can
Yeah,
use. So the question is that what is that we can do, and there, so clearly protecting the users, the devices, and whatever, it's really important. But you don't want to do it in a way that it's so you create a burden that discourages people from using the service. So if you stop people from using LinkedIn because you have to go through incredibly long process to authenticate every time, that doesn't work either. So we need to find a good balance. And I think that in the past it was less necessary because it was less appealing or less attractive to steal that data. But as people rely more and more on things like LinkedIn, the value of the account, the value of the data in those accounts grows, and therefore the incentive to go and steal that information, to break into the account, get bigger. And so we need to, so the, and again, I don't have an answer to that, but I think it's something that as a community, we need to think about in terms of how do we want to manage that? Because the risk is going to always be there, but
absolutely.
we
And
want to minimize it or to manage it better.
yeah, I mean, a friend of mine she shall be nameless, said to me, "Oh well, you should never have done premium." And I went, "Why?" Well, you were obviously a target. And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, anybody spending that amount of money per month is going to be a target because obviously they got information to protect, so you're setting yourself up to be hacked." That was his conclusion. But on the other hand, I thought about this a lot. It's all around trust. We in business, it's a bit like, when somebody gets introduced to somebody else in LinkedIn, there's a trust component. They know it because it's come through a reliable source. But once trust goes, your whole faith in the system evaporates very quickly. And that's kind of what I felt, when I'd kind of been sort of, when I'd been hijacked. I felt my whole faith in something I've been using, for 22 years, LinkedIn, suddenly collapsed. And if we're going to encourage the rollout of our very necessary smart cities, which we need for a whole pile of reasons for our environmental management, if we're going to have trust in these networks, well, then the issue of security has to be absolutely foremost. And you're absolutely right. It has to be user friendly. It can't be so laborious that you're going to scare people off. But at the end, we have to have this element of trust. We trust it. And once the trust is betrayed, it's very hard for us. There's something in our DNA which makes it difficult for us to get back in there. You know,
Yeah.
just as in real
But then
life.
again, you said that your trust in LinkedIn kind of plummeted, but you're back on LinkedIn.
Of course,
So
of
is it
course.
okay? So let me ask you this question. So is
Yeah.
there any difference in the way you use it now after you learned the hard way?
Well, certainly. I mean, I couldn't have reacted quicker. I mean, for a hack that happened at 4 o'clock, 4:20 on a Saturday morning, and I discovered it when I logged on the following morning on time. I responded immediately, so I did respond.
Mhm.
But I would be very much more careful now on who I would connect with. That's definitely been, I get like you, I get connection requests all the time, but now I'd be very, very careful. Like, I had somebody try to connect with me today actually, and I was kind of very standoffish about it. And so, yes, I'm chastised and I'm more careful. LinkedIn is a very important part of my professional profile, And I literally spent 10 days trying to rebuild that profile because all the data was lost. So I had to rebuild from scratch. Fortunately, my contacts are still there. Fortunately, some of my messaging, recent messages were preserved, but the profile I've had to rebuild. So yes, I will be much more careful going forward. But I do believe we're far more vulnerable than we realized on LinkedIn. I think that that's the message to me. We're a lot more vulnerable than we might realize. We might think it's safer than it is until I get somebody who explains to me what exactly happened, which I'm still waiting for, you know?
Yeah. Well, and even if you know what happened, it's not gonna. You might feel better about it, but clearly that doesn't reduce the likelihood of that happening to somebody else or happening in the future. And I guess that's again, we need to kind of what are the trade-offs here? But I guess that the issue is that you might get into a situation where we're going to be more careful, and maybe to some extent is even a good thing. We are just much. It's like, if you like to bike, you should be wearing a helmet,
Mm.
and so that's actually good. You wearing a helmet. So there might be some ways in which you protect yourself, which might actually be helpful to everybody.
Yeah, well, the
But
obvious thing I'm telling people to do is to do backups. The trouble is so
yeah,
many of us use LinkedIn in a completely fluid and real-time manner. So the data goes in, we upload, we repost, we post. I didn't keep copies of these postings.
I don't even know you can. I mean,
Yeah,
can you
well,
just have a list of, can you download, for instance, the list of all your contacts? Because, as you were talking, I was like, oh my God, if my all my contacts disappear tomorrow, I don't even know who they are, all of them. It's like
yeah.
so many of them. How do I even go building the list of contacts again? It would take me forever.
Yes. Well, I found out when I was doing all this and I was digging around the bowels and the back rooms of the LinkedIn, templates, service access or service support, or uh, I found that you can, under GDPR rules, get copies of all your data
Yeah.
from them. So you can actually get copies of your data and get a downloaded copy. You can get the full copy. You have to put in a request and ask for it. So I'll definitely be doing that. Now, what they did say to me when I said to them, look, this person Myra has come in. Um, can I have me back, please? They said, we don't keep copies of you. We don't. And so I said, so that's gone. And to a certain extent, I can understand if you have an actual, a front end, and then somebody comes in and scrubs the front end as you, and then replaces it with more front end information as you. It just happens to be a different person with a different name, but the system can't distinguish, that actually Myra is a woman and not me. Then you're replacing all your information as the authorized user account. And then they say, well, you replaced everything, didn't you? And I said, no, that was Myra. She did that. But if on the other hand, they say you can download your data. So I'd like to see what is that I can download. Maybe it's the context, which is the most important thing. But I'll be doing that next. I'll be requesting it. But I don't think they can restore what was there before. Some people said I've talked to in the IT industry said, oh yeah, they can. They keep a copy. I don't know. I haven't had an answer on that one yet. I'm still waiting for a response. Now I've rebuilt the profile. It's more up to date.
Mhm.
I don't want all of the old stuff actually back. I'd have it as a
Yeah.
copy, but I've redone everything. I put in about
Yeah.
28 hours of work. It's all redone now.
Well, I guess that from on the other end, if LinkedIn kept all your historical data, all the that in itself could be a security issue, because if somebody breaks into LinkedIn, then they have access to all that data. So I guess that there is a sort of an incentive for them not to store as much data, because then they protect themselves and protect users, I guess, too. But the question is that if you download all the data, I mean, is that data going to be in a usable format, or is it just like
And
kind
yeah,
of so so that opens all sorts of sorts of issues that I think that you really need to think about more and more, because our identity, who we are, it's really increasingly a digital identity.
Exactly.
that has many shapes, many forms, but it's just no less real than our, physical body that we go through life. So, that's interesting. Anyway, our time is up. So, well, let us know, how this, if there is any new development here, because I think it's very interesting, and it's going to scare a lot of people that are well, scared, or I guess make them aware of. I mean, we all know that things like this could happen, but at the same time, we say, yeah, it's like earthquakes. Yeah, they can happen, but really, you know, out there. So, anyway, Fraser, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Well, in your events, your story. It's a really interesting story with us today.
Thank you very much, and thank you for giving the opportunity to put it out there. I really appreciate that very much, Monica.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, and thank you all for listening in. And do keep listening to us for the next episodes as well. Thank you very much.